coming to you live from ICSC Vegas. I'm Edward Cohen, host of the Commercial Observer Tangent podcast, conversations with real estate and tech innovators. Excited to be here. Today, we're going to talk about permitting, which doesn't get too much attention, but it often sets the timelines in real estate. We're going to talk about how permitting has become one of the biggest bottlenecks in commercial real estate. We're going to talk about the impact of fragmented municipal workflows. We're going to talk about AI and where is AI actually creating value in permitting and approvals. We're also going to talk about construction productivity and why it still lags despite major technological progress. And we're also going to talk about what parts of real estate development remain human and will still require human judgment and local expertise. We do, in fact, have the perfect guest to talk about this. Andreas Rotenberg, co-founder and COO of Pulley. How is ICSC Vegas treating you, Andreas?
Well, let's see. It's been about, 9 hours. It's kind of a late arrival. So far, so good. I mean, I love being here in this innovation conference within a conference, and it's just phenomenal. And I think first year for this event and first session of this podcast. So pretty exciting.
First ever live podcast at ICSC+Proptech. What an honor. So Andreas, you've seen this industry from multiple angles. You were part of the team at Honest Buildings through its exit to Procore, and later served as chief of staff at Procore through its $11 billion IPO. So why is permitting still such a challenge today?
Oh my gosh. First off, it's gotten more challenging than ever. I think it's just been a continuous slow march of added regulation, of project teams doing more projects in more places. That's made it more difficult on the sort of project team side. And of course, we've got a labor shortage. That's no surprise to anybody here. I would say, not just when it comes to people in the field, but also people in cities. There's a shortage of qualified reviewers, which means review times are longer. So all of these things have contributed to the current state of affairs, which is it takes 4 times longer to get a permit than to build a building, which none of us should be okay with as citizens of this country.
And what's actually happening during those timelines? As you said, permitting can take longer than the construction itself, which doesn't make sense. So what's actually happening during those timelines?
Obviously, depends on the project, depends what you're building, the nature of the permitting process. Sometimes when we talk about it taking 18 months to get the approvals you need to build something, we're not always talking about one permit. We're talking about a complex combination of entitlements, site permits, building permits, fire and life safety approvals that are required that have to be sequenced in a particular way. And so as we've added more and more regulation, more and more of these permits that you have to go and do one after another, permitting has, of course, gotten longer, but then also the time it takes to get each one of those has increased. I can boil that down to 2 things. One, the city reviews are slower than they used to be because the supply and demand, the demand of people wanting to do projects, the supply of reviewers is imbalanced. And 2, the size of a submittal has tripled in the last 30 or so years, which means that it's actually more work for project teams to prepare them. And it takes more rounds with the city to actually get to a place where everything is signed off. So historically, maybe it took 3 weeks to go through one cycle of review, and then you just get a permit, you could move on with your life. Now, you might go through 4 or 5 rounds of review for certain types of complex projects, and each one of those rounds of review is adding a month or so.
That sounds like a dynamic that is ripe for AI, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But first, you hinted at the fact that there's different jurisdictions, and yes, across the U.S. there are over 20,000 jurisdictions, each with different timelines and processes and approval requirements. So how different are really the processes across different jurisdictions?
There's a family resemblance between permitting in many parts of the country. There are regional patterns. Some of this has to do with what the actual concerns are for communities in different parts of the country. If you're in Northern California, there are seismic concerns that are going to require certain types of reviews and approvals that you wouldn't have to deal with, fortunately for you and I living in New York City, just sitting on bedrock. But in New York, there's a complex layers and layers of history under the surface, right? In FIDI, we've been building there for 300 years. That leads to its own set of challenges. So there's permitting rhymes from one community to the next, but it's a business, it's a type of workflow where the details matter, and if it's not exactly right, it's wrong. And so actually being able to understand all of those details is really, really important and pretty hard.
What do commercial real estate teams still underestimate about permitting and taken, it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of humans that need to approve and review, but on the commercial real estate side, what do they underestimate about permitting?
Before I answer that question, let me just say that I have tremendous empathy and respect for the people that build stuff. I started my career doing development. I've been involved in permitting projects on 3 continents. We're not alone in the United States in terms of making it really hard to build stuff. And so I think it's natural that after decade of this problem getting worse and feeling unfairly treated in many cases on projects, that a lot of people have developed kind of a fatalistic attitude about permitting. It just feels like something that they don't control, that they're at the mercy of these people in buildings departments, that it's arbitrary, and that it doesn't really matter what they do. It's going to take however long it takes, no matter what. Our experience at Pulley now, having done $15 billion worth of projects in thousands of jurisdictions around the country, is, yeah, there are things that you don't control, there are things that we don't control, but how you operate, the level of rigor in your execution, the effort you make to understand the requirements to produce really strong submittals does matter tremendously. And what you actually see is today, if it takes, let's say for a ground up retail project in whatever, the suburbs of Boston where I grew up, the average time it takes to get approval today across site and building permitting might be 18 months. But that's an average. Their project teams, the top 20% of project teams are maybe getting through in 12 months. And the bottom 20%, it's maybe taking them 24 months. So that's a 12-month difference, a full year worth of potential revenue lost, depending on the quality of your execution. I think people are waking up to that. They see it more and more, and there are more and more tools and technologies that enable people to do a better job with this work. But I think there are probably still folks out there that say, whatever, it depends on the reviewer we happen to get that day.
For people who may not be familiar yet, at a high level, what is Pulley and who is it for?
Sure. So Pulley is an expert permitting partner powered by AI. So we work with a wide range of different types of customers, but certainly lots of retail owners, REITs, retailers, Starbucks, AutoZone, folks like that, to help them to get the approvals they need to break ground. And we do that by combining powerful models that we use to help understand the requirements for projects, to help scan through a plan set to find the comments before you get them from the reviewer. But we combine that with a team of trusted experts in dozens of cities across the United States, all full-time employees of ours, who actually take on the responsibility for permitting. And actually, many of those folks are licensed architects. I was looking at this the other day. I think if Pulley were an architecture firm, we'd be the 600th largest architecture firm in the United States.
Wow. In your 10 plus years overseeing construction projects, what did you see that made you build a company around it, or that there was a better approach out there?
Well, I'll never forget the last project I ever worked on, which was a development project just on the outskirts of Amsterdam. I was living in Europe at the time. It was a retail project. We were doing a big shopping center. We missed an inspection. We didn't get our certificate of occupancy before a holiday weekend. And I just remember screaming. A lot of screaming, a lot of anger and frustration. And I think that feeling, the feeling of running into a regulatory hurdle that cost us, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and just the level of collective upset and frustration really stuck with me. And I think was a core part of why Charlie and I wanted to go on this mission to help project teams avoid those types of situations entirely and just be able to make permitting faster, make it more predictable, let them focus on other stuff. I mean, you said earlier you don't feel like people talk about permitting that much. I think people talk about permitting a lot, and I don't really think they should. Let's make permitting boring again.
I like that. Is there a hat? Do we have a hat? But tell us, what does it actually mean to take on permitting for a developer or a retailer?
So we don't usually work on a project-to-project basis. We're essentially almost an embedded part of our customers' teams. We're working with them across, in some cases, hundreds of projects that they're doing in any city in the United States. We're intimately involved in actually refining the prototypes and the early stage plans for the concepts that they're doing. And then we are responsible for the actual execution. So we're working closely with the design team, We're using custom requirements analysis tools to actually figure out, okay, what are the submittal items that we're going to need up front? What are the permits that we're going to need? And then actually quarterbacking the entire submittal process along the way, ensuring that everything is done to the highest quality. And then also managing the relationship with the jurisdictions as well. So for our customers, we become the one point of contact for them nationwide. And I think historically that's sort of sounds kind of paradoxical, right? That we actually are experts in permitting everywhere. But at this point now, 2 out of every 3 projects that we start is in a jurisdiction where we just got an approval in the last 3 months. And so we're operating at a level where we just have an unprecedented level of familiarity with how permitting works in these places. And it's almost like starting on second base, like we've been there before.
I want to touch on that because it seems like team composition is critical to your mission and to your approach, especially for those local expertise and local relationships. So talk about how you combine software with domain expertise.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we have always, at our core, we're a technology company. My co-founder, Charlie, has started his career as engineer at Amazon, and we've always, I think, started from a place of the missing piece here is technology. It's the ability to build great software that works for people. Now it's the ability to extract every ounce of value out of our data and to be able to actually feed that into some sort of model. I don't know if anyone has checked recently, but if you ask Claude for help with your permitting, it's not going to be very useful. That's because so much of the documentation that would be needed isn't actually on the internet, or what's there is outdated. So we do a lot of work to sort of clean and structure this data to make it useful to our customers. And what we found is that by making that the primary focus, by building great technologies, we're actually able to attract people into the work of permitting who would have never previously thought about doing that. I can think of a person on our team who used to be an architect at Perkins and Will. That's a great architecture firm. I'm not sure that person suspected that they would be doing work in permitting, but I think when you actually strip away some of the more frustrating elements of it and the sort of blocking and tackling of dealing with these paper-based, so what can be paper-based processes or poorly made permitting portals, you're actually left with a pretty interesting analytical problem. Like, it's a diagnostics problem. And so we've been able to get some really great people to come and do permitting who wouldn't have previously. And I think the caliber of those people, the fact that they're technical, the fact that they understand the design objectives of project teams has enabled us to have a really unique offering in market.
It's all about the teams, especially with tech companies when they're trying to, I don't like using the D word, disrupt, but in this case, you're optimizing and making permitting more efficient, and most importantly, you're making it attractive for high quality talent to want to solve that problem.
And it's funny because Pulley sometimes feels a little bit like, I can't even think of a good analogy, but we have teammates in dozens of states now who are local to that place, who are embedded in the development community in those places, who understand how permitting works in those places. And so sometimes when we do an all hands, you can kind of go around the horn and find out, what the weather is in 30 different cities because everyone is calling in from somewhere else.
So $15 billion in projects you've now supported. What have you learned that you didn't know before?
We've learned millions of things. We have, if you look in our library of permitting requirements and the checklists that we now have programmatized in terms of what it takes to get to open a convenience store associated with a gas station in the state of Indiana, and the fact that you need to have a vestibule there or you're going to get a comment. I mean, it's a long list. But if I zoom out from those details and look at the big picture, I think what we've learned is kind of that theme I was talking about earlier. When we started this business, our hypothesis was that actually the quality of execution and the level of rigor associated with trying to understand this work would make a big impact. I think what we learned is that that's really true. That wasn't just a naive sentiment from some California-based technologist. It's really the way that the world works.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to talk about AI, because a lot of AI conversations right now are still experimental in real estate and even theoretical, but permitting feels like a unique practical workflow problem. I mean, there's repetitive documentation, fragmented communication, inconsistent reviews, massive admin overhead. Where does AI genuinely create value today in permitting and approvals?
Yeah, so permitting is an interesting use case for AI. And one reason is because fundamentally it's just a really, really complicated sometimes boring set of rules. And an agent or a model can be really good at structuring those and making sense of them and applying them. So that's one reason that permitting is a great use case for AI. The problem is that every day that you're waiting in permitting could cost $5,000 to $10,000, and the details matter. And AI on its own can't really do permitting very well. It can't really do a lot of things very well yet in construction. And so that's what makes it tricky. And I think that's why our model, giving our customers access to this frontier technology, but in a way where they're not trusting the AI, they're trusting our team. They're hiring our team, but our team understands how to work with this technology. And as a result, I think for most of our customers today, this is the first truly AI native product that they're using. And some of them love that and are aware of it. And some of our customers are indifferent to or don't even realize how much of the work is actually being done by this technology behind the scenes.
Without revealing any secret sauce, any particular workflows that are being significantly compressed or automated, document review, submissions, compliance checks?
Yeah. I think the most striking example for us is when you think about what it used to take to actually generate reliable research on what the permitting process was going to be like and how long it would take. That probably used to be a 4 to 5 day process on the types of projects that we do for our customers. And they were literally browsing the web, calling cities to try to confirm this information. And in the last 6 months, it's been a very dedicated area of focus for us. We've taken the time it takes to actually do that research down from 5 days to 1 day. And our goal in the next 6 months is to take it down from 1 day to 1 minute. That's both powerful because it helps people to make more informed decisions about the projects that they do. But also, it was so expensive in terms of human time to do this type of work that it was just not something that was really on people's diligence checklists before picking a site or whatever, going hard on a deal that they already had an option on or something like this. And now for our customers, it's a standard part of their operating procedure that they're doing on every project, and that's just the beginning.
There's a lot of skepticism about the reliability of AI, and rightfully so. The other day I saw a case where in front of a judge, they presented a case that was completely made up. It had never happened, but AI helped draft it, beautifully written, and it sounded like a real case, and they discovered it during trial, which it would be a big screw up if that happens with building the wrong wall or the wrong room.
100%.
So how do you think about trust and hallucinations and accuracy with permitting and AI?
A couple things. First, AI makes mistakes. Humans make mistakes. AI makes different types of mistakes from humans. But I don't really think people should trust AI when in construction right now and in workflows like permitting. And the reason is the cost of being wrong is extremely high, and it still gets things wrong. And I think that's why it's not enough always to trust the technology. You have to trust the team. That's why we are so forthright about the importance of the people in the solution that we offer, and why we don't hide them behind a curtain. We put them out in front, and we let our customers interact with them all the time. And I think a general rule, whether it's how our permitting team is using AI or whether it's internal teams using Pulley, the people are responsible for their work. So it's a tool, it gives you leverage, but you can't turn off your brain. Like, you are responsible, and it should be no more acceptable to ship bad quality or sloppy work because AI helped you do it than it should be if you did it on your own.
Yeah, certainly measure twice or measure 3 times, cut once approach. Let's talk about the public sector and how do municipalities think about modernization and modernizing their own processes. What's been the reception of Pulley? Are there particular locations or jurisdictions that are more tech-friendly than others?
We regularly meet with folks in the public sector. We look at people in government as partners. We think that by and large, if you talk to somebody that runs a buildings department, they care deeply about what the experience of permitting is like. Sometimes that translates through to the experience of a developer in that community. Sometimes it doesn't. But regardless, I think that the intent is there and the awareness that something has to change is there, in part because many of the directors of buildings departments, it's hard to be running an organization that doesn't have the human capital it always needs. And I think there's a high level of curiosity about how they can use AI, how they can use conventional types of software to make their community a more attractive place to build in, and also to make the experience. I think the other piece of it is we all want to work in a place with the best tools. And if we want people to go and work in buildings departments, we need to give them better tools to do it. And I think that's something we're excited about doing at Pulley, but we've always wanted to start with project teams. And that's because it's a great way to learn about permitting all over the country, in all 50 states and thousands of jurisdictions. And we want to take those learnings and then whatever shape that takes, I don't know, but at least use it to be helpful to folks in government.
Talk about the second and third order effects of materially faster permitting. What will CRE operators, retailers, and the jurisdictions themselves do when they can do permitting 10 times faster?
It's a long list. First and foremost, there are projects today that don't pencil because of permitting. There are stores that don't open. There are healthcare centers that can never see patients. There are homes for people that never get built because when you actually look at the IRR for that project, it just doesn't pencil when it takes as long as it does to get an approval. And so I think a world with faster permitting is a world where maybe the built environment can catch up a little bit to some of the other underlying changes in the economy. By the way, it would also be a world, I think there's a real chance that we talk about AI. We might be testing the physical limits of compute here unless we build data centers faster. And I was talking to the SVP of development at one of the largest co-location providers in the United States the other day, and he said it's the 3 Ps. It's permitting, power, and procurement. But permitting is on that list. There can be more abundance, generally speaking, in terms of all the things that people want. But the thing that maybe I feel equally passionate about is that the experience of building would be more fun and more creative, and there'd be less friction and latency to it. And I think it just frees up headspace for people to think more about other types of things and how to optimize what they're actually building. There are lots of things. I mean, it's a world that we believe that we will live in. We think this will be the next decade will be the first decade since 1950 or so that permitting actually gets faster, and we're excited to be a part of that story. Hopefully there's some sort of mass data extinction event between now and 10 years so that no one ever, if I'm wrong on that, no one can call me on it. But I genuinely do believe that that is true. And I think we should, as a community, as an industry, we should feel that it's unacceptable that permitting takes as long as it does. We shouldn't tolerate it. It shouldn't seem like business as usual. There's no physical, rational reason why this needs to take 6, 12, 18, 24 months. We're not up against the laws of physics. This is an informational problem, and by the right application of technology and human capital, we, as you said, can make this 10 times faster, at least.
Last but not least, collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, dead or alive, to do a partnership with, who would it be?
One of my personal heroes has always been, he's still living, so we could get him to come out to Pulley. He's Bill Gates' favorite scientist. His name is Vaclav Smil. I would love for him to join Pulley and to be able to help us from first principles re-engineer every single aspect of compliance and permitting, and I think he would do an incredible job. And after he was done, he would write a very long book that almost nobody would read about it, but I would read it and I would enjoy it.
Vaclav, if you're listening, hit Andreas up.
Slide into my DMs.
So just to recap, today we talked about why permitting is one of the most overlooked operational problems in CRE, how AI is helping reduce friction in repetitive approval workflows. We talked about the private and public sector relationship when it comes to permitting, and why fixing permitting is ultimately about more than software, and it's about having the right humans and having the right technology empowered. Where can Tangent listeners and our beloved audience and retailers and construction management teams learn more about Pulley and connect with you?
Our website, www.withpulley.com, a great place to go. We have a encyclopedia all about permitting. It's like Investopedia, but about permitting, and some great case studies of other customers of ours who we're proud to partner with, or just message me on LinkedIn. I spend too much time there.
Andreas Rotenberg, COO and co-founder of Pulley. Appreciate you joining us live from ICSC Vegas.
Eddie, it's been a pleasure.
Muchas gracias. If you learned something new or enjoyed the conversation, text a friend the link to this episode right now. You can find links, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes.